Most people think that when life feels empty, something's wrong with them. They panic chasing solutions to fill the silence, new goals, distractions, or self-help routines. But what if the emptiness you're feeling isn't failure, but the most important sign of your life? What if this painful void is actually the gateway to your true identity, hidden beneath years of performance and survival masks? Carl Jung said the collapse of your persona, the false self, isn't something going wrong but something going right. And the numbness you feel afterward isn't apathy. It's a profound awakening waiting to be recognized. In this video, you'll discover why your life feels like it's falling apart exactly when you're healing, why the silence after transformation is sacred, not scary, and how the soft whispers you hear afterward aren't confusion. They're your authentic self finally speaking up. You'll understand why everything you thought was motivation was just anxiety in disguise, and how slowing down might actually speed up your true growth. We'll walk through real stories and practical insights to show you exactly how to navigate this powerful inner shift. If you've ever wondered why success, validation, or achievements leave you feeling hollow, you're not broken. You're ready for something real. This video isn't a motivational speech, it's an invitation into a deeper way of living. If this resonates with you, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because in the next few minutes you're about to hear the most important conversation you've ever had with yourself. Some people don't fall apart because they're broken. They fall apart because the version of themselves they built to survive finally stops working. That mask you wore for years, the one that got you applause, validation, approval, it begins to crack. You go to work, show up for others, smile in photos, but inside, something feels deeply wrong, like a play you've rehearsed too long. This is not depression, it's not burnout, it's the collapse of the false self. And it's the first step toward freedom. Carl Jung called it the moment when the persona, the socially constructed mask, starts to fail. Not because it's faulty, but because you've outgrown it. That's when the truth begins to whisper, "This is not who I am anymore." The most terrifying part? Everything looks fine on the outside. You're functioning, succeeding even, but every action feels hollow, every word rehearsed. You sit in meetings or conversations thinking, why am I even here? It's the haunting dissonance between outer performance and inner truth. You feel like an imposter, not because you're incapable, but because the role no longer fits. This is a form of psychological death, ego death to be exact, a quiet implosion of identity that no one else can see. And that's what makes it brutal. You're grieving a version of yourself that others still applaud. But inside, that self was built on fear, compliance, and a desperate need to belong. And now it's over. The false self doesn't collapse all at once. It dissolves silently. You begin to say yes out of habit, but the voice inside says no. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You chase goals you no longer care about. It's like watching a puppet act without a puppeteer. The strings are still moving, but you're no longer inside. This emotional numbness isn't apathy. It's the first sign of truth trying to emerge. When the soul stops cooperating with the show, the mask can no longer hold. And while everyone sees your performance, you're backstage, quietly unraveling. The real you isn't gone. It's just been buried under layers of persona. And the deeper you've buried it, the louder the collapse will echo when it finally breaks. At this point, most people panic. They try to repair the mask. Maybe if I work harder, if I stay positive, if I push through. But no amount of effort can restore something that was never real to begin with. This is not the time to hustle. This is the time to listen. The pain you feel isn't failure. It's shadow work healing in motion. The shedding of everything that kept you safe but small. It's messy, confusing. It might feel like losing your identity, but what you're actually losing is the illusion of who you were trained to be. And now begins the sacred disorientation, the gap between roles, the in-between life. This discomfort? It's not the end. It's the psychological rebirth of something truer. You may find yourself waking up without direction, sitting in silence, staring at ceilings, wondering what the point of anything is. And that silence will feel unbearable, Because you were raised in a world that worships noise. Spiritual emptiness is the word people fear. But what if it's not emptiness, but space? The space where the self begins to speak softly from underneath the ruins. The Jungian persona was never meant to be permanent. It was a costume, not your skin. And now that it's peeling off, you have a chance to feel your own breath for the first time. Not the breath of expectation, but the breath of someone finally alone with themselves. David, a 42-year-old construction worker, lived this collapse without warning. One day, after 2 decades of following routine, his body showed up, but his soul didn't. The alarm rang, he got dressed, he drove, but something had shifted. "I feel like I'm watching my life through a windshield," he said. "I'm here, but I'm not in here." That's inner transformation in its rawest form. It's not glamorous, it doesn't look like a TED Talk. It looks like sitting on the edge of your bed for hours, not knowing whether to go back or forward. But make no mistake, the false self's collapse isn't a glitch, it's a portal. A crack wide enough for your real voice to finally step through. But there's danger in this phase. You'll want to fix it, escape it, rebrand yourself, build a new persona that looks more authentic. That's just another mask. You can't perform your way into truth. The sacred silence after collapse isn't a space to fill, it's a space to feel. If you rush it, you'll miss the whisper that only silence brings. And it's in that whisper that the authentic self-awakening begins. It won't come with fireworks, it will come with stillness. You might walk slower, speak less, care differently. But you'll know. This time it's not a performance, it's not a role. It's the beginning of who you actually are. If you're in that place now between who you were and who you're becoming, don't run. Sit with it. Don't rush to be okay. Let the false self die fully, so that what rises isn't another mask, but a mirror. And if this resonates with you, check the first pinned comment. We've selected a deeper resource that might help guide you through this transition. It's not a shortcut, but it's a light. And as you finish this chapter, leave a comment below. What part of your mask are you finally ready to take off? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. No one warns you that healing might not feel like triumph, that after the tears, the breakthroughs, the forgiveness, you might not feel whole, but hollow. It's one of the most disorienting truths of transformation. The moment you stop living from wounds, there's nothing. No excitement, no clarity, no urgency. Just a strange silence where the pain used to live. The emotional numbness after healing is not failure. It's not a relapse. It's the sacred space between the death of who you were and the birth of who you're becoming. And in a society addicted to performance, this pause gets misdiagnosed. But Carl Jung knew, the void is not the enemy. It's the birthplace of the self. You didn't lose your fire, you're just no longer burning for the wrong things. You used to be driven by fear, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of disappointing someone, the fear of being unlovable. That fear gave you fuel, anxiety disguised as motivation. But now after healing, those engines are gone, and it feels like you've stopped moving. That's not stagnation. That's spiritual sobriety, a moment when the soul is no longer intoxicated by urgency, pressure, or applause. And yes, it can feel terrifying, because nobody taught you how to live without a goal, without an identity, without an audience. But in truth, you've entered a sacred pause, a space not to achieve, but to regenerate, to sit in the dark long enough to see what light is truly yours. The emptiness is not punishment, it's protection. Sarah, a nurse who spent years surviving emotional abuse, reached this space after 2 years of therapy. She expected fireworks after healing. Instead, she found quiet. "I thought I'd feel strong," she said. "Instead, I just felt still." This stillness unnerved her. For months, she questioned everything, her job, her dreams, her relationships. Not because they were wrong, but because her inner compass had changed. She wasn't angry anymore, she wasn't desperate. And without those old emotions, she didn't know who she was. That's the paradox. When the pain leaves, you meet a version of yourself untouched by survival mode. And that self doesn't speak in volume, it speaks in presence. Not action, not noise, just presence. But here's the trap. Society will tell you to fill that silence immediately. Get back to the grind. Find a new mission. Set goals. Hustle harder. But healing is not a rebranding opportunity. It's not a marketing campaign. The spiritual emptiness you feel is not a glitch. It's a sacred cocoon. And if you break it too soon, the wings won't form. The ego screams for movement, for plans, for certainty. But the soul whispers, wait. This pause is not laziness. It's labor, invisible labor. You are shedding the skin of your false identity. You are growing something new. But like all sacred things, it grows in the dark. Unseen, uncelebrated, and absolutely necessary. David, the architect we met earlier, spent almost a year in this void. Every day he woke up with no plan, no hunger to produce, no desire to impress. He called it the year of floating. At first, he hated it. But then something shifted. In the absence of old desires, a new curiosity appeared. Not loud, not urgent, just a small what if. That was the moment the inner transformation began, not through effort, but through allowing. Through trusting the emptiness long enough for something real to emerge. It's not passive, it's receptive. The ego forces, the soul receives. And David realized, healing doesn't give you energy, it gives you space. And in that space, the truth arrives. We have to unlearn everything they taught us about silence. Silence is not weakness, it's not apathy, it's a message, a new language that the self speaks when the noise dies down. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it. Not in words, but in sensations. A craving for slowness, a draw toward simplicity, a desire to just be. This is shadow work healing at its highest level, not confronting demons, but learning how to live without them. Can you be present without needing to be productive? Can you feel peace without needing chaos to define it? These are the real questions, and they're only asked in the quiet after the storm. This sacred emptiness is not for the faint of heart. Because it asks you to sit in discomfort without fixing it, to stay present when there's no applause, to choose stillness in a world that calls it laziness. But if you can stay, if you can breathe through the void, something holy begins to move. A whisper, a flicker, a moment of inner knowing, not about who you were, but who you might become. Not about performance, but about presence. And when that whisper arrives, it won't shout. It will knock gently. Will you be still enough to hear it? Or will you rush back into noise, afraid of what the silence might reveal? Maybe you're in that space now, between healing and becoming, between the collapse and the rebirth. If so, don't fight it. Don't fill it. Feel it. Let it break you open, let it soften your timelines. And if this chapter resonates with where you are, leave a comment below. How do you personally experience this sacred silence? You might discover that your stillness is not emptiness, it's a signal, a sign that you're finally becoming available for something real. And that's exactly what we explore next. The subtle call of your truest self, the one that doesn't shout, but guides you home in silence. After the noise fades and the masks fall, what remains isn't clarity, it's quiet. And in that quiet, something unexpected happens. You begin to notice small, strange desires. To take a different route home, to touch the earth barefoot, to write a sentence in an old notebook without knowing why. These aren't tasks, they're whispers, the early language of the authentic self awakening. Unlike the ego, the self doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, chase, or impress. It emerges like mist over a still lake, soft, patient, waiting for you to notice. Carl Jung believed that the self reveals itself only when the ego has exhausted its illusions. And when it does, it feels nothing like ambition. It feels like coming home. You won't find this new voice on a vision board. It doesn't speak in checklists or metrics. It arrives when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What feels true now?" This transition is terrifying for people who've lived their entire lives based on performance. They've confused anxiety with passion, urgency with meaning, panic with purpose. But when the false self collapses and the silence is honored, a different energy emerges, a grounded aliveness. It's not fueled by fear. It doesn't rush. And for the first time, your body, your heart, and your mind begin to sync. The voice of the self doesn't say, "Be better." It says, "Be real." And that one shift changes everything. David, who once lived by deadlines and deliverables, found this whisper not in a project, but in a pause. One morning, while sitting inside that abandoned building he used to pass every day, he didn't think of how to renovate it. He just listened to the wind through the cracks, the stillness of old bricks, the quiet. And something happened. Not a grand revelation, but a sense of rightness. That's how the authentic self speaks, through resonance, not rules, through intuition, not ideology. He began visiting that building weekly, not to do, but to be. And that's when a new desire took form, not forced, but felt. He didn't chase meaning, he received it. That sacred silence turning into direction. Many people sabotage this stage. They mistake stillness for stagnation. They think, if I'm not pushing, I must be failing. So they fill the silence with tasks, self-improvement, performance 2.0. But the self can't be rushed. It's not a to-do list. It's a pulse, a rhythm of being. If you overthink it, you'll miss it. If you force it, you'll crush it. The self will not battle the ego for space. It waits. And only when you're ready to live without applause does it step forward. This isn't passive, it's powerful. Because real transformation isn't loud, it's alive. You feel it in how you breathe, how you move, how you choose, not to impress, but to express. Here's the paradox. The more silent you become, the more clearly you hear yourself. Not the self that was trained to succeed, but the one that was born to be. You stop asking, "How do I prove I'm enough?" and start asking, "What matters to me even if no one is watching?" And suddenly, ego death becomes liberation. You no longer need to chase worth. You begin to live from it. That's the difference between performing and becoming. One demands effort, the other asks for surrender. That's the psychological rebirth, not a better version of your past, but a new form altogether. One that doesn't hustle to exist, one that simply is. And what rises from that place is not perfection, it's truth. Not clarity, but direction. Not confidence, but trust. You begin to sense where you're meant to go, not because you planned it, but because your soul nods quietly toward it. This is the part where real life begins. Not the life you were told to live, not the one shaped by fear, by trauma, by pressure, but the one that makes sense only to you. You might walk away from things that once defined you. You might rest more, speak less, create differently. But everything you do now carries your signature, not for validation, but because it's yours. And maybe that's what the self really offers. Not answers, but authorship. Not certainty, but intimacy with your own experience. You become less concerned with being right and more devoted to being real. You no longer need to explain yourself to the world. You simply begin to live in a way that makes you feel whole. That's the inner transformation people don't post online, the one that doesn't need likes but creates love. And when you live from that space, the world doesn't necessarily change, but your way of being in it does. Not louder, but deeper. Not faster, but freer. If you felt that whisper, however faint, don't ignore it. Follow it. Even if it makes no sense yet. Even if no one else sees it. Even if it scares you. Leave a comment below. What is your soul softly asking for right now? You don't need a full plan, you just need to listen. Because the most powerful truths don't come with fireworks. They come in moments so quiet only the honest can hear them. And the next time that whisper calls your name, don't silence it, answer it. It's not your ego, it's you finally coming home. So much of what we call progress is just performance. So many of our goals are driven by fear, not truth. But when you finally stop running, when you stop trying to fix yourself, impress others, or outrun the silence, you start to hear something deeper. You start to feel who you really are beneath all the roles. And that version of you isn't here to compete, it's here to breathe. Now you know, the collapse of your false self is not your end, it's your entrance. The emptiness that follows isn't a void, it's a sacred space. And the whisper you've started to hear, that's the real you, asking to live without costumes, without fear, without urgency. So here's the invitation, don't rush back into the noise. Don't chase clarity before you've listened to the silence. Instead, ask yourself, what part of me have I outgrown and what's trying to be born? Can you stay present even when nothing makes sense? Can you trust that being still is not the same as being stuck? Leave a comment below. Which part of this journey are you in right now? The collapse, the silence, or the whisper? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs today. And if you want to go deeper, check the first pinned comment. There's a powerful resource waiting for you there. No noise, no fluff, just clarity. And before you go, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this isn't the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of your return to yourself.